Hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to have you here as we explore some engaging language concepts. Today, we'll be focusing on word meanings, synonyms, sentence formation, and how to frame questions and answers effectively. This session is titled Word Meanings, Synonyms, Sentence Formation, Questions and Its Answers, edited by Jaya V. Nair. Over the next few slides, we'll go through these topics step by step to help improve your understanding and skills. Let's get started and make this a fun learning experience. Let's start by talking about stove lids. These are the heavy metal covers that sit on top of a stove. They're also called metal covers, which is a simple synonym. If you think about it, these covers are designed to shield the burners and help in cooking or cleaning. An example sentence would be, "The old stove lids were too hot to touch," which shows how these covers can become very hot during use. Now, moving on to the word resurrected. This means to bring something back to life or use, essentially reviving it. When we say something has been resurrected, it's like giving it a second chance. For example, the old story was resurrected when Tom mentioned it again. This shows how a story that was perhaps forgotten or ignored can come back to life through conversation. In the context of our overall theme, understanding these words helps us see how objects and ideas can be revived or reinterpreted, just like the old stove lids or stories. It's all about giving new life or meaning to familiar things. Now let's look at the word slack and what it means. One synonym for slack is jacket, but in this context, we're talking about something a bit different. When we say slack, we're referring to something that is loose or not tight. For example, if you think about a rope that isn't pulled tight, it becomes slack. You might notice this if someone stops pulling on it. The rope will loosen and become slack. This idea of looseness is important because it helps us understand how the word is used in different situations. Moving on, there's also a term, roundabout, which can mean a short, close-fitting jacket. Imagine a jacket that fits snugly around your shoulders and waist. That's what we call a roundabout. For instance, if Tom wears a roundabout that turns out to be too small for him, it shows how the word can describe a specific type of jacket that fits closely. So, in summary, slack generally refers to something loose or not tight, and a roundabout is a particular kind of jacket that fits snugly. These words are useful because they help us describe clothing and other objects with more precision, and understanding their meanings enhances our overall communication skills. Now let's look at the word skin in this context. It means to beat or punish someone. For example, in the sentence, Aunt Polly threatened to skin Tom for his mischief. Here, skin is used figuratively to show punishment or discipline. Moving on to the synonym, whip, which is a more straightforward word that also means to beat or punish. Next, we have switch, which is a different kind of implement. It refers to a thin cane used for beating, often a flexible stick. The sentence, "She picked up a switch to scare Tom," gives us a practical example. It shows how a switch could be used as a tool for punishment, similar to a whip. All these words, skin, whip, and switch, are connected through the theme of discipline or punishment, which ties into the larger story about Tom and Aunt Polly. Understanding these words helps us grasp how discipline was viewed and expressed in that context. Now let's look at the word peril. It means great danger, so it's a pretty serious situation. The synonym for peril is risk, which also highlights the potential for harm or loss. For example, in our sentence, Tom knew he was in peril when Aunt Polly caught him. That shows how peril can be a real threat, especially when someone is caught doing something wrong. Remember, understanding words like peril helps us better express when someone is in serious trouble. This connects to the overall theme of expanding our vocabulary to describe different levels of danger and risk more precisely. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide.